This message is for any Asian MAGA out there. We're next. I want to remind you that we are closer to the undocumented immigrants that are being deported right now than we are to them. We have more in common to the undocumented immigrants than we do to them. You remember how quickly MAGA turned on us during COVID, and it didn't matter if you were Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Japanese, Filipinos. To them, we were just chinks responsible for the China flu. It is foolish and frankly embarrassing that you think just because you wear the red hat that you're going to be spared when your time comes. This country is never going to be pure enough or white enough, and they are never going to accept you the way that you accept them. They have forgotten that they too have immigrants' blood in them, but let us not forget the crazy, difficult journey our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents took to get here, to escape their country for a chance of a better life. This is not it. Everybody deserves that chance.
Today on There Is No Such Thing as Proximity to Whiteness, we have the largest immigration rate in all of U.S. history. And people who look like me often think, it's definitely about the Mexicans and Latinos. Well, guess what? They were Korean, so people who literally look like me. Today at the Hyundai LG plant, which produces batteries for electric vehicles, the largest raid in all of Homeland Security history went down, where they arrested 475 people, mostly of whom were of Korean descent. And the reason why I say that there's no such thing as proximity to whiteness is that a lot of people who look like me think that this whole immigration crackdown is about Latinos and brown people, forgetting that Asian people are people of color, as in, we are not white. And South Korea just learned this the hard way, because just barely a few weeks ago, South Korea committed to spending billions of dollars investing into the US economy. Where literally just barely 2 weeks ago, they pledged an additional $150 billion into the US economy. And that's already after South Korea committed to investing $350 billion investment from South Korea to the United States for things like shipbuilding, semiconductors, batteries, and energy. Hyundai specifically stated that they were going to invest an additional $5 billion into that US investment. And just a quick reminder, Hyundai and Kia just merged. So we're talking about Hyundai, Kia's, and Genesis, which committed to expanding its automobile and parts production in the US, including building a new steel mill in Louisiana and a state-of-the-art robotics facility. And apparently, even after being a puppet state of the imperialistic United States for over 70 years now, South Korea hasn't learned a single thing, because they were like, we're gonna try to buy our way into America's good graces and lower tariffs by investing billions of dollars into their economy, even though, just a friendly reminder, proximity to whiteness is not a thing. Just like proximity to anything doesn't turn you into that thing. Like, I can stand next to a billionaire as long as I want. It's not gonna just magically make me a billionaire. And until we address that and stand together, our communities will continue to fall. Thank you and stay safe.
Yesterday we watched a video of a MAGA woman who called iCE on Korean workers working at a large Hyundai LG facility in Georgia. And that story, it has got many Asian Americans furious. They are angry, and they are also afraid that they might also be deported, like how those Korean workers were taken back to South Korea. And they are also calling out their own, especially those who voted for Trump. The FAFA season is in full swing. Let's get into the video and hear from those Asian Americans.
He is going to piss every single world leader off, and he is going to isolate the U.S. from the rest of the world even further. This Hyundai plant raid in Georgia is going to spark chaos here in the U.S. They detained nearly 500 workers, and around 300 of them are South Korean nationals, not criminals. A lot of them are here on training visas legally for Hyundai's multi-billion-dollar investment in Georgia. This is the biggest foreign investment project in Georgia's history, and the U.S. government just brought it to a halt. There are a few reasons why this is dangerous. First, diplomatic fallout. South Korea isn't just some random country. They're one of America's allies. They're pissed. They've already sent diplomats to help their people. So messing with this relationship could screw trade, military cooperation, and future deals. Second, the money, the investment. Hyundai and LG is dropping billions into the U.S. EV production. If they start thinking their workers aren't safe here, do you think they're going to continue to invest? Nope. They'll take their project elsewhere. Communities in Georgia is going to lose out big time. And third, trust in the system. Some people are here legally. If having the right visas doesn't protect you from being dragged off in a raid, what does it say to America's credibility? Who's going to want to come here for work or business? Just remember, this is Trump's America. These raids aren't about criminals. They're about rounding up anyone who isn't white. And if they can sweep up people who are here legally, what's going to stop them from sweeping up anyone they want? Just ask yourself, is this how you make America strong, or is this how you tear it apart from the inside?
Hyundai has been building a new factory here, and what happens? ICE comes and arrests and harass the workers there, and then detains some of them and deports them. And what's Chunky Milk's response?
ICE was just doing its job.
So Chunky Milk has constantly said that all these countries are bringing their factories from overseas to come here so they don't have to pay tariffs, and it creates jobs for Americans. But why would countries send their workers here to build a factory if their workers are then going to be harassed and detained by ICE?
But I know nothing about the instance.
You're asking people to come build factories here, but then you're arresting the people as they're building the factories? What kind of incentive is that?
I don't know anything about it. No.
A tariff is nothing when your workers are going to get arrested. Wayland Yutani could not be more evil. What do you mean that people would come here and build a factory so that way they don't have to be paying tariffs, which are supposed to improve the economy, but then when they come here to build the factory, you arrest them?
Now that we've all seen 300 Korean engineers in Georgia get hauled away in chains, I have something quick to say to my fellow Korean Americans who voted for this orange president. 야, 300명의 한국 엔지니어들 끌려가는 거 봤어? 아이스가 들어닥치면은 니들은 시민권자라고 안전할 것 같아? 신발끈 단단히 묶고 있어라. 들어닥치면 니들도 튀어야 될지 몰라. 알았어?
So there were 452 illegals apprehended at the Hyundai mega plant construction site yesterday near Savannah. And I was the one that reported the information that I had to ICE. But it goes beyond just someone working illegally. Let me explain to you. These people are working for slave wages. Some are not getting paid. Some are being trafficked. They send money home to their country.
You didn't save them anything. You got 475 people arrested and thrown into detention. You made their lives infinitely worse. Before I continue, if any of this matters to you, like and follow. Let's call this what it is. It's a textbook white savior complex. You talk about modern day slavery because it lets you play the hero. But if you actually care about exploitation, you know that actions like yours never punish the people at the top. Hyundai made it very clear. None of the detained workers were their direct employees. They were all hired through subcontractors. So when you call ICE, you didn't get the multi-billion-dollar corporation in trouble. You got their victims punished. You targeted the people trying to find a better job than they could get back home. Why not go after the companies that profit from this system? Because that's hard work. Calling ICE on the vulnerable, it's easy. You claim you were saving them. Saving them from what? A bad job? Now, thanks to you, they're in an ICE detention facility facing deportation. You didn't end their exploitation. You just made the US government final exploiter. You aren't a hero. You're just a tool that powerful people use to clean up their messes. Let me know what you think in the comments.
Did you know you can pay $5 billion just to get humiliated? That's exactly what happened to the Hyundai and LG battery factory in Georgia. By the way, it's not Hyundai, it's Hyundai. Over 500 people were taken, and more than 300 people were Korean national. When the president of South Korea met Trump last month, I couldn't even finish the video.
저의 관여로 남북 관계가 잘 개선되기 쉽지 않은 상태인데 실제로 이 문제를 풀 수 있는 유일한 인물이 트럼프 대통령이십니다.
It was so cringe, the way he was kissing and the translator fighting for his life.
So resolving this issue through my engagement is not an easy thing. And the only person that can make progress on this issue is you, Mr. President.
Apparently, they discussed South Korea's future investment in the US, including energy, mineral, infrastructure. But just in 11 days, South Korea media is saying 뒤통수 맞았다, meaning they got stabbed in the back. US media claims that a lot of them overstayed their visa. But the investigation isn't over, so we'll find out more. Korean netizens are furious. Koreans are all about pride. Having our own people being mass detained, that's not gonna sit well with them for the next maybe 10 years. Some are saying shut down the factory, pull out the investment, bring our people back home immediately. And others are saying they believe Korea is being disrespected because we're a smaller country. And some think US is pushing out Korean workers because they want to replace that with US workers, even though the innovation is from Korea. And surprisingly, a lot of them are saying that Trump is trying to punish Korea for attending this Chinese military parade, marking the 80th anniversary ending World War II. And apparently it was anti-West event. Anyway, this is far from over. It'll be interesting to see if this will change the relationship between South Korea and the US. We'll find out. Did you know
legally?
I waited for reporting from the Korean side before confirming this, and now we can finally address this once for all. They were on either B1 or ESTA visas. Here's what those allow when it comes to business activities. Can you attend meeting, conference, seminar, and training? Can you provide consulting work on behalf of the Korean company or client? Can you perform work if your compensation comes from outside of the US? Can you receive any salary, payment, or financial benefit from the US entities? Can you work directly for a US company? And we all know they were all Hyundai employees from Korea. And guess what? 35 out of 300 had L1 or L2 visas, which do allow them to work legally for multinational companies as managers, supervisors, or specialists handling hands-on work for a much longer period. Yet, they still detained them. But what's new, right? Anyway, what they're concerned about now is this illegal status record remaining on their documentation forever. And some of them are talking about challenging this in court, but this can take forever. All of them just return to their families ASAP. A plane with 375 seats has been arranged to take them back home tonight. And the cost of that will be covered by LG. I'll update you as more details comes out. Follow for more.
Oh, they were here illegally.
The way these people were being treated is what matters. I didn't know a damn thing about the Koreans. That wasn't my dish. And obviously that's being investigated because they had work visas that had expired.
First of all, Tori, you look like the love child of Kate Gosselin and Mama June. Second, you should see what the President of the United States has to say about this because he's walking this back as well.
It's a battery factory in that case, as I'm told. And you know, when they're building batteries, if you don't have people in this country right now that know about batteries, maybe we should help them along and let some people come in and train our people.
Because Hyundai, pronounced like Sunday, not Hyundai like you're saying, is a Korean company. So it makes sense in this instance that Hyundai would send Korean nationals over to train people as those factories are being built. And I notice you have your comments turned off in your most recent video, so it sounds like someone can't take the heat. Because you potentially royally screwed up the Georgia economy. You're risking potentially up to 8,500 jobs. And you said that you didn't know that there were Korean workers there, which means that you probably didn't know anything at all. Because if it's already difficult for you to pronounce Hyundai, then, you know, I'm assuming that a lot of other things are probably difficult for you too. But anyways, have the day you deserve.
The Hyundai ICE raid in Georgia just shows that a lot of this country still does not realize that some of these workers can't be replaced. That's not a joke. We tried to copy Asians already, recently, and it didn't work. If you didn't know, we gave grants to TSMC, the largest chip manufacturer in the world, to come to the US and manufacture chips locally. This would not only create jobs, but also ensure that the US has some chip manufacturing capability. Because right now, all the top chip manufacturers in the world are in Asia, and that scares the US government. So because of the US grants to push manufacturing here, TSMC set up huge factories in Arizona. And what happened? Well, plans were announced in 2020 and manufacturing still hasn't started as of today, as far as I'm aware. And a big reason for that is Americans just don't work as hard. There have been reports of American workers not wanting to be on call for emergencies, clashing with management from Asia. It's just a different work culture. And being on call isn't for everyone, but when you're making microchips, these insane pieces of technology with components nanometers wide that require super sanitary conditions, The work culture just isn't to be found here. Now, that's not to say all Americans are like this, but we all know that work and study culture in Asia is much more important over there than it is here. And I'm guessing now the Hyundai factory is going to experience these same problems. It's obvious to me that this administration is more focused on creating a whiter America than anything else. Because instead of deporting Hispanics and Korean nationals, who can and will do the work that other people can't, why doesn't our government focus on bringing down, I don't know, grocery and gasoline prices like they promised on day one? Why are we busy banning vaccines in Florida and switching out office plaques in the Department of Defense so that they can say Department of War instead? Not a great plan.
I really don't understand the ice raid on the Hyundai power plant. It's so comically illogical that my first thought was somebody close to Trump from within his organization is trying to sabotage him by giving stupid instructions to ICE. Because one of the main reasons for tariffs is to encourage foreign companies to operate in US soil. And not for nothing, like that's a valid way to use tariff. All my liberal friends became like the most obnoxious version of someone who's taken Econ 101, like, oh, tariffs get passed straight to the consumer. No, sometimes companies like Hyundai decide to build a factory in the USA to get around the tariffs. I'm not bringing that up to say like the tariffs were like a win. I don't know what the net effect of that was. But Hyundai building a plant in the USA to hire US workers to produce batteries for them to sell, that is literally the textbook scenario of success with the tariff. Literally exactly what you want. And then he raids it with ICE and gets rid of the people. The Koreans were there to set up the factory, which is harder than working at the factory, right? Is setting it up for the first time, and then train US workers to do the job. I tend to give people credit. Like Trump winning the 2016 election, a lot of you are too young to remember this. Like in 2015, Fox News and the Republican Party did not like him. He had to beat the Republicans, and then he had to beat Hillary Clinton to become president for the first time. So I've never thought that he was dumb. I don't think he's a mastermind. Like, oh, 4D chess, like, you know, like I've seen those memes, like his supporters. Like, I don't think that. But he's not dumb. But now I'm thinking that he might actually be. And everything else was like a crazy, happy, lucky accident. Like, that's very hard to believe. I think he was smart, and now his mind is starting to go. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. Like, what did he think was going to happen? Like, right or wrong, I can't even understand what his thought process was.
I think the crazy thing about this whole ICE raid at the Hyundai and LG battery plant in Georgia is how quickly the South Korean government reacted. Because within 48 hours, they've already sent diplomats over to Georgia and negotiated the terms of release for the 300 plus South Korean nationals that were detained. And on top of that, they also chartered a Korean air flight flying out of Atlanta to take their people back home. And from what we know so far, the flight might be departing as early as Wednesday, the 10th of September. And usually the US government is responsible for the cost of deporting the people back to their home country. But in this case, the South Korean government is eating up the cost. And so far, Hyundai and LG haven't released the visa details of all the detainees. They just said they weren't sure yet, and there are also subcontractors that are contracted through different companies outside of LG and Hyundai. But it's likely that they have one of these two visas. One is the B1 visa, which is a working visa that allows you to stay in the United States for up to 6 months. And it's also highly likely that the majority of them actually have the ESTA visa, which is a visa waiver program that allows them to stay up to 90 days in the United States for work or for travel. So for the most part, they did seem that they entered the country legally, but it's still unclear right now if some of them overstayed or not. The 300 plus South Korean nationals were all employees of Hyundai and LG back in Korea. And their sole purpose of coming into the US is to help set up the battery plant and make sure it's fully operational. They're employed by Hyundai and LG, and they're the experts, which means they know the machines, they know the operations, and they get paid by LG and Hyundai back in Korea. And right now, Hyundai and LG are halting all business trips to the US. And they're also urging employees who are currently traveling to return home ASAP. The battery plant, when completed, is supposed to employ up to 8,500 people. But given the situation right now, it's unclear when this battery plant will be fully operational.
I just read that the Hyundai plant that was raided by ICE was supposed to create about up to 20,000 jobs in Georgia. 20,000 jobs for Americans. They're estimating between 12,000 and 20,000. And now 20,000 jobs are in jeopardy because of the detainment of almost 500 Koreans by ICE. Plus, I saw that video of the woman hiding for 6 hours in an air duct to hide from ICE. And I just constantly think of that question of when do we know that we're in a fascist state? And everyone was that movie Zone of Interest, oh, it's so boring. It's just kind of this family living next to a concentration camp. But that is what it's like. We are all just kind of living and continuing in the system until the system decides to widen its scope to our existence. And if you are Korean or a Korean immigrant or Asian, it's just well, they were, This was a specific case. Like, how many times are you able to kind of explain away what is happening? Whether it's because of a defense mechanism, if you're just like, if I just bury my head in the sand, it is what it is. Whether it is out of genuine fear of like, if I say something or fear about this, then like, I could be next. But like, this is the time to start thinking of like, what do I do? If I'm not a straight white man in the United States, like, how do I at least prepare and understand what's happening? Because there's 3.5 months of this. And if this is where it's accelerated now, like, you have to start extrapolating out where this is going. Because the train is moving and we are on it, and we need to look forward and see where the track is being laid.
Here's the thing that is so very annoying and frustrating about the Hyundai situation. It isn't just the fact that it happened. It isn't just the fact that Korea was treated like a third, fourth, fifth class citizen when it is literally pumping in trillions of dollars in K-beauty, K-pop, K-food, and is a legitimate contender for one of the big boys when it comes to this table of industry. And it isn't just the fact that it is obviously race-based, and it isn't just the fact that it was some random white female Karen politician from Georgia who wanted to make sure that she looked popular at her base that all of this went down. What is so freaking frustrating is how Korea is going to respond. For many Korean people, Hyundai is equivalent to Korea. When you attack Hyundai, you attack Korea. There's just no question here that Korea was slapped in the face here. But how is Korea going to respond? I think many Americans are thinking, understandably, that Korea is going to yoink its business. It's going to yoink the billions of dollars that it promised to Donald Trump in investment, that it is going to respond in kind to this affront. The problem is, of course, is that Korea relies very heavily on the United States for keeping North Korea at bay. South Korea knows that it would not be what it is today from a capitalistic point of view had it not been for the US and UN support during the Korean War. In the minds of many Koreans, including Korean Americans, South Korea owes a very large debt to the United States, and they cannot afford to pay right now because North Korea continues to flout its nuclear capabilities, and they're right across that 38th parallel. The only thing that is maintaining that very fragile status quo is, of course, the threat of U.S. military aid to South Korea. So what is South Korea going to do? Here's the thing. I don't even know that the South Korean government, the South Korean administration, even the South Korean people understand the depth of the insult they have just incurred by the Trump administration. I'm not sure that they appreciate the white supremacist nuance of what has occurred. And even if they did, because I don't want to infantilize the Korean people, I'm not here trying to infantilize the Korean administration. I'm simply saying that with everything that precedes the history of the Korean American experience as distinct from the Korean national experience, there is a high likelihood that they do not fully appreciate the racism involved. Even if they did, the United States has them over a barrel. And I think it will be frustrating to see how all of this unfolds. I think what will likely happen is that Hyundai will say, sorry, our bad, Donald Trump. We are not only going to continue to invest the billions of dollars we've promised, we'll make sure to do so in the way that you want. And it's all going to look very rosy for the Trump administration and that Karen who caused this problem in the first place. If you actually look at the Hyundai website, their official statement and position is, we don't know who these illegals are, and we condemn anyone who is working in any of our plants or facilities without legal status under U.S. immigration law. Now, all of this could change. There are definitely progressive politicians in South Korea right now who are up in arms. They are pissed. They see this for what it is. They are very frustrated with the immigration policy of the United States and the fact that the United States has been completely unwilling to facilitate the investment that they have begged South Korea for. And I could be totally wrong. I could be totally wrong. Hyundai could come out with a revised statement, say that they're very, very upset with the way they're treated and they're packing up shop and going back home, but I doubt it. The response from South Korea has been fairly anemic to date, given everything that it has suffered, how humiliated Hyundai has been.
South Korea is chartering their own plane to pick up the over 300 nationals who were wrongfully detained by ICE in that fiasco that happened in Georgia. South Korea said, we do not need your services, America. We are taking our people back home and screw you. And now Orange Oompa Loompa is doubling down. He's backtracking. Because when this fiasco first started, he was like, they're illegal aliens. ICE was just doing their job. And now this heifer is saying, well, maybe we should bring their people here and have them train Americans. Maybe we need to look into making the process a little better. Making the process a little better? Sir, they were here on valid visas. What are you talking about? And obviously the fallout from this is huge, right? Because I bet people in his cabinet told him the severity of the situation and that this has caused an international conflict. That the deal that he made with President Lee Jae-myung of South Korea, the deal that they made where President Lee Jae-myung said that Korea was going to invest $350 billion into America, is on the line. And that South Korea is not happy right now. That's why that man is doubling down. That man is doubling down and backtracking because he is realizing that the international relation and the conflict that this has started is not going to be good for America and the American economy. Hyundai and LG have already stated that they are pulling back. They are slowing down the process of manufacturing cars and stuff like that. That this whole incident is going to take years to come back from. That they will not be fully operational for a very long time. I doubt any of the 300 Korean nationals are going to want to stay here in America after what they just experienced being wrongfully detained by ICE and being stuck in an immigration detention facility, which we all know have terrible conditions. I highly doubt any of them are going to stay in America with the risk of them being detained again. All of those people are going to go back to Korea. And it is going to be extremely hard for Hyundai and LG to convince Koreans to come to America to help train Americans and to help them get these plants back up. It has caused irreparable damage. Irreparable damage. It is going to be very difficult to do that. Because a lot of those workers in Korea that work for Hyundai and LG, actually any international business in Korea that's looking to come to America, they're going to look at this whole incident and be like, I don't want to go to America. I don't want to be wrongfully detained by ICE. I don't want to be stuck in a detention facility. And it's going to be extremely difficult for them to bring anybody from Korea here to get them to even work here or to even get them to train the people, American people, without this incident being a huge factor in their decision making. I also want to emphasize how difficult it is to I guess not difficult, but how hard it is to get somebody out of immigration. Once you're in immigration, once immigration picks you up, once ICE picks you up, it takes months for them to process you. Okay? The fact that the South Korean government jumped on this and they helped protect their people, helped protect their own nationals because they knew that America was going to ship them somewhere that they would not know where they would be because they do not trust American government. They don't trust American law enforcement. The fact that they jumped on this fast, yeah, that's why they're going home. They're going home, and South Korea said, we are going to count all of the 300 nationals who are detained by ICE and make sure that these people get out and they go back home. And I doubt any of them are going to stay here. And Korean people are looking at this whole incident and feeling betrayed. They are looking at Americans a little bit different. Not a little bit, actually. They're looking at Americans differently, very different.
By now, you have all heard about the events that happened in Georgia yesterday, and I see a lot of people talking about the US and South Korean alliance. But there are some very key foundational facts that are missing from these conversations. So let's talk about it. The first question that we need to ask ourselves is, would a North and South Korea even exist if the United States hadn't been so heavily involved in South Korea's affairs? Now, the history books will say that without the United States and the UN, without their support, South Korea would have succumbed to communist North Korea. But we need to look at the magnitude of that help and security. First, I need you to guess how many US military bases there have been and still are in South Korea. That number is over 70. So during the Korean War, the United States and the Korean government legalized prostitution around these military bases, and those areas were known as camp towns. In the 1960s alone, camp towns produced 25% of Korea's GDP. And what do you get when you have sex? Babies. A large population of mixed race babies at that. Now again, for those of you who don't know, Korea has had foundational Confucius views. And so the shame that comes around single motherhood and mixed race babies at that time, it's gotten better, but at that time helped start what is known today as the international adoption industry. Now, don't get me wrong, international adoption or intercountry adoption existed before the Korean War. However, South Korea is the world's largest child exporter, and the United States is the world's largest child importer. So Korea began exporting these children to westernized countries. And mostly, thanks to the Holts, Korean babies were shipped to the United States, much like myself. But that's a story for another day. So let's recap. When you look at the foundation of the South Korean and United States alliance, you have to realize that it is set in military security, economic support, and the human, emotional, democratic values of children and family. And as a result, all of this cooperation has created basically a dependency on the United States. And as an example of that dependent relationship, the Korean government has taken responsibility and apologized for its created human trafficking and child exporting. But has the United States? Will they ever? Probably not.
Just saw the clips, and let's make sure we understand what's really going on here. A MAGA supporter named Tori called iCE and reported Korean workers at a massive Hyundai LG facility in Georgia. iCE showed up, raided the place, and detained nearly 500 workers. Then South Korea government had to send a plane to fly those nationals back to Seoul. This is shocking on so many levels, not just because of the raid itself, but because of what it represents: big international business, racial politics, Trump ally migration enforcement, and yes, how minority communities in America can be tricked into voting against their own survival. Let's pause here. Why was South Korea pulling money into a facility in Georgia? Why bring their workers in America in the first place? Some analysts say this wasn't just about business, it was also about proximity to whiteness. South Korea wanted to be seen as America's loyal partner, investing in US soil to secure influence, legitimacy, and acceptance. But here is the thing. Buying proximity to whiteness doesn't buy you safety. The minute politics shift, the system you tried to align with will spit you out. This raid proved exactly that. History shows us that proximity to whiteness won't save you. Black Americans have been saying this for generations. You can play by the rules, build businesses, but when the system decides you are the problem, all of that means nothing. Now Asian Americans, especially those who lean conservatives, are learning that lesson. You can invest billions employ thousands, even vote Republican. But when ICE comes knocking, the proximity is gone. Whiteness is not a shield, it's a moving target. And if you are not white, eventually you are vulnerable. Notice something important. This all started because one MAGA woman decided to pick up the phone and call ICE. MAGA culture encourages people to police each other, to see immigrants as threats, to report their neighbors. That's not law and order, that's fear and division weaponized. And here is the irony. Trump voters among Asian Americans helped create this culture, and now some of them are caught into this trap. This is what happens when you normalize scapegoating. Sooner or later, it lands on you. Let's be real. Many Asian communities, particularly Korean and Vietnamese Americans, leaned Republicans in 2024 election. They thought the GOP stood for family values, business growth, and discipline. But those values are surface level. The core of Republican politics under Trump is exclusion. It's about deciding who belongs and who doesn't. And when the push comes to shove, guess what? Immigrants don't belong. Even if you vote Republican, even if you built the factory, even if you believed in the dream, the rate shows exactly that. As a Democrat, you have to pay attention here. This is why immigration policy matters. This is why community protection matters. Democrat, as imperfect you are, fight for the pathways to citizenship, for reform, for keeping families together. Republicans promise safety and business growth, but what do they really deliver? Raids, fear, and deportation. This story is a living reminder that elections aren't abstract. They decide who gets to stay, who gets to work, and who gets dignity. Think about the workers. Nearly 500 Koreans rounded up, detained, shipped out on a plane. Do you even know if they had legal issues? Reports say there was no clear evidence. They weren't given a chance to prove themselves. They were treated as disposable. This is how Trump's immigration machine works. No nuance, no fairness, just brute force, and the fact that it happened at a Hyundai LG plant, a symbol of international partnership, shows how reckless and damaging these policies are. And here is the deepest sting. Asian Americans themselves are now reflecting on the role they played. Many voted for Trump, many believed in his promises, and now in their own communities, people are saying, you voted for chaos. You voted for policies that deport us, detain us, break us apart. This is not just political regret, that's culture betrayal. It's your own vote coming back to haunt your people. The reason here extends beyond Asian Americans, Black, Latino, immigrant communities. All of them need to see what happens when you empower leaders who run on hate. You may think you are safe, that will be the exception, but you won't. The system they built doesn't care about your hard work, your values, or your loyalty. Voting Republican as a minority is like setting a fire in your own house and hoping the flames won't reach your room. This Hyundai case proves that sooner or later the flames spread. So where do we go from here? First, Asian Americans have to ask themselves, was that vote in 2024 worth? Was aligning with Trump worth risking your neighbors, your co-workers, your family? Second, South Korea as a nation has to reflect, what did investing billions in the US buy you? Because when it came down to it, it didn't buy you protection. And finally, as Democrats, you have to use this moment to remind everyone election matters. Your vote isn't just about taxes or slogans, it's about who gets to live and work in dignity. The raid that happened at Hyundai LG facility is a tragedy, but it's also a lesson. Proximity to whiteness won't protect you. Only solidarity, only smart voting, and only demanding humane policies will. And this is what I always tell my viewers. Whenever you're voting, make sure you're not voting just depending on your own emotions. Vote by analyzing the policies of all candidates and then choose the candidate who've got policies that are aligning with your own interest. This should be a lesson to all Americans. Next time, when you're voting for a candidate, make sure that the candidate is not against your own interest. And the truth is, Trump have said it all. In his campaigns, he was very open. He was very honest. He said that he was going to deport immigrants. He said that he was against those foreign immigrants. And people went ahead and voted for him. what's happened to these Asian communities, what is happening to these Koreans, is also what happened to Latinos. I have a bunch of videos that talk about that topic of how also Latinos faced with the same problem as what these Asians are facing. Make sure you tell me what you think about this case. Just drop your own opinions. You think that Korea made a good decision investing its billions in the US? Was it worth it? What's gonna happen to this Hyundai LG facility that was said that it was planning to employ more than 8,000 American workers? And mind you that these Koreans who were deported, those ones who were taken back to Seoul, were training American workers working at that facility because they are experts. They've been working for Hyundai LG in South Korea, and they went to the US just as experts to train those American workers. And this would mean a lot to Georgia State, not only to Georgia State, but to the whole America, because this facility would be paying taxes to the US government. It would employ Americans. Come on, guys. Americans, I think they're the ones who are losing at this point. Let me know what you think in the comments. And that was it for today. Mr. TA signing off. Ciao.